Cheers, y'all.
Is that Dave?
Well. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to this fine little program, the world-famous Smoking and Toasting.
Hi, Mom.
And we are so glad to have you on board for show number 176, which makes us... Ian, this is where you jump
halfway
in.
to 200.
Thank you.
Sorry, I'm trying to get this all shared out on social.
Well, I appreciate that.
I have to tell you, though, the new music with the well.
Yeah, that works.
That's spot
That's
on.
the one.
That's
the one.
definitely
so
good.
all music on Smoking and Toasting is now used by permission, and that's an important thing to keep people happy and keep lawsuits from originating and keep record labels from being able to scam any more money. So that's what it's all about. That is what it's all about. Oh, now we might have to be careful talking about record labels today because we are in the studio with the Heaven's Door bourbon and whiskey. And that's the whiskey that's Bob Dylan's a part of.
Well, we had Heaven's Door on here. We had the was it the red label one on, you have on here, the Tennessee Bourbon.
Yes.
You bought that. That was months ago now.
A long time ago. Well,
Yeah,
it was
that was
right
probably
after,
a quarter of the way to 200.
It was actually right after I think it came out. So when did Austin Millspaugh is here? Austin, welcome to the show.
Hi guys, how you doing?
Thank you for being here. We appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
Austin is with Heaven's Door. When did Heaven's Door debut as the first whiskey?
Originally it debuted 3 years ago.
Okay.
But because of all the Bob Dylan fans, we kind of blew through our first year stock.
Okay.
So then in our second year is kind of when we kind of reached more of a broader range.
Okay, so I think that's when we maybe got a hold of it and got our first bottle and did a tasting on the show. And I will tell you straight up, we're sometimes a little tough on celebrity sponsored. Yeah, celebrity sponsored things.
We expect
whiskeys, yeah.
But we determined that this was a really good whiskey, and that's this ain't no Conor McGregor. Is what we're saying.
Right.
This is what we're saying. So it's a
Well,
real pleasure.
I mean, in Conor McGregor's defense, he's a very tough guy, so he needed a very tough whiskey.
Well,
and it was
that's
tough.
a good way to put it. That's a
it
good
was
way
very
to put
tough.
it. And I will tell you right now, it's not a very good whiskey. But if Connor were in the room, I'd probably lie. I'd probably lie. Well, welcome to the show. It is show number 176 for Smoking and Toasting. We are brought to you by B&B Butchers and Restaurant at 1814 Washington Ave in Houston, and in the shops at Clear Fork and Fort Worth, BB Italia on Memorial in Houston, and BB Lemon on Washington Ave, and the Annie Cafe and Bar on Post Oak Boulevard in Houston. We will be at B&B next week for the show. Yeah, and we'll be live. Oliva Cigars will be there.
Oh,
we'll
it's going to be good to see
some
Trent.
wonderful Oliva Cigars, and Jeremiah, our bud at B&B, is preparing an Irish whiskey tasting for us right before St. Patrick's Day. So it'll be fun
awesome
to get into that sort of vibe. But today we're in the studio with Bob Dylan's whiskey, and we're very excited about being able to taste, because we've only tasted one of the expressions. So we're excited about doing that, and excited about having Austin in the studio as well. Ian, in addition to what I'm anticipating will be some very good whiskey, we'll be tasting some interesting beers this week, and I'll get to the one that I think you're going to be really stoked about. But we'll start out with Anchorage Brewing Company. We've had a number of
hard
their
to go
beers.
wrong with Anchorage.
They
Their
generally
Christmas sale every year is amazing.
Yes, and we've had a number.
Every year.
We've had a number of their IPAs on the show, which have all been very good. But today we'll be trying their Catalyst Kolsch.
That sounds fun.
Yeah, it's also hard to say 3 times.
Catalyst
really fast.
Kolsch. Catalyst Kolsch.
Yeah,
get a little twist.
So looking forward to that. Old Nation Brewing Company out of Williamston, Michigan, has an IPA they call M43. It's a New England IPA. We'll be tasting that. And then this is the one I'm so excited. I haven't tasted this, but I'm so excited not only to taste it, but for you to taste it, because
all right.
it is the... We explained, Austin, we use only very high-tech sound effects on the show.
I like it.
Perfect. Okay. All right. So we'll be tasting the 2018 Grand Reserve Cellared Ale. It's a barley wine from the fine folks in Broussard, Louisiana at Parish Brewing
I'm
Company.
all about it. I love Parish.
So
I love their
never
love their brews.
tasted their barley wine.
I've never had a barley wine from them.
I had a number of things, including, and they were my pick, as you may remember last week when we did our personal top five. They were my favorite brewery, so I'm really excited to taste their barley wine. So that is going to be a thing to look forward to. So there's good news and bad news for premium cigars in the news this week. We'll share that. A Cohiba Humidor has sold for a record price. We'll tell you how much, and you can just, hope that the guy that bought it invites you over so you can, take a look at it,
Nice.
maybe smoke a cigar. And tough times for Corona beer. So we'll talk about that on the show today as well. So it's going to be, I think it's going to be a good show. But I say that every week. So
No, it's going to be a good show. You know what we're going to do today? We're going to have beers, and we're going to talk about whiskey and sample whiskeys.
Your description makes me instantly say it's going to be a good show. And it was a much simpler description than mine.
This is not the worst job I've had.
No, it's not. It's maybe the only job I have for a while. But we are thrilled to be here and excited to have Austin in the studio. Austin, we'll get to. I got a lot of questions about the brand and how it got started and how it works and how involved Bob Dylan actually is. And so we'll get to some of those as we progress here on the program. But first, Ian, I always ask you about this time of the show if you've smoked anything interesting lately, but I actually know that you did because I was sitting across from you when you smoked it. You were sitting across from me, yes. I just don't know how interesting it was. So
I went super classic this week. I went with the La Flor Dominican.
La Flor Dominicana.
La Flor Dominicana, sorry, yeah. The Reserva. I am totally blanking right now.
Okay, so
Reserva Especial, yes.
It was the little shorter torpedo, right?
Yeah, it was a 4.5 by 52 Perfecto is what it was.
Nice.
Super cool little cigar. I didn't have a whole lot of time, so I jumped right into it. Appearance-wise, this thing is a gorgeous little cigar. It looks like a little shillelagh, actually, because it's so small.
See, you're in the St. Patrick's Day mood
right,
already.
right.
So, yep.
I mean, the label is almost the size of the cigar because it's a very small cigar, but it is it's enough cigar to get you going.
Now, La Flor generally packs a bit of a punch.
Yeah, when you think La Flor, you're not thinking Fisher Price, my first cigar. You're definitely in generally the full-bodied or at least medium plus. As far as the strength goes. This one, the appearance on is gorgeous, dark brown wrapper, perfecto size. I mean, construction, you can see it and you can feel it. It looks great. It was semi-smooth, some veins.
It's a good
pretty
looking
firm
cigar.
overall. Yeah, the pre-light smell, the sniff, the pre-light nose on this was all about earth and leather and coffee.
Nice.
And then the pre-light draw had little hints of mocha going on with also the earth and coffee and some pepper. The initial light on this was kind of what you expect, actually, a bit of a pepper bomb. But because it's a Perfecto and it has that just one smaller spot that you light, it didn't come across as a big, huge pepper bomb. It came as a nice, smooth, like, now you're tasting pepper.
Right.
And so once it lights, it then goes to this full size, and you start getting more of that, and then you start getting the cigar itself. The first third of this cigar was all about the coffee, the earth, some barnyard notes, and just a tiny, tiny hint of mocha on the end. The middle of this cigar. And I'm jumping right to the middle because there's a reason for this.
Well, it doesn't take you long to get to the middle.
Well, no, it's not a very big cigar, right? So, although it smokes a little bit longer than you'd think for even as small as it is, it does burn rather slow. But the middle of this cigar, it started getting more of the leather notes and a little bit of hay and a little barnyard kind of flavors that I really kind of enjoy. Like the kind of fermented hay kind of flavors, those kind of things. It's a very classic cigar. Smelling and tasting cigar. The ash on this, I didn't bother tipping the ash till I was halfway through the cigar.
And that's pretty daring for you because you generally wind
I
up
always
with
get
ash on
all
your
over
shirt.
me,
Yes.
right? Ash all over myself. And then I actually had to forcibly like tip it off in the ashtray because it was just such a solid, crazy ash.
Nice.
This thing burned. Pretty even. There was a little unevenness, but it took care of itself. And then burned pretty even all the way down to the end. The flavor of the cigar ramps up from the initial light, which was medium. Mm-hmm. And then you get to the full size of the cigar. So here I'm backtracking just a touch. Then you get to the full size of the cigar, and you're getting the full flavors of it. And as you get to the middle of the cigar, you pick up a little bit in strength. So by the time I got to the middle of the cigar, this was definitely a solid, full-strength cigar. Full-strength flavor overall. The smoke in this cigar is huge, silky smoke. Like, tiny cigar comes out with huge puffs of smoke. So the mouthfeel on the cigar and the smoke itself is really, really worth experiencing. If you're into light, sweet cigars, this is not the one for you.
Yes.
Because it has a bit of spice and a little bit of pepper lingering that goes on beyond those really kind of sweeter Maduro flavors that you get, the coffee, the hints of mocha and things like that are really in there, but they're not super, like the mocha's not super up front. It's not a super sweet cigar. I smoked the cigar until it was time for me to dash out the door. So I smoked it down until it was pretty small. Of course, it was small to begin with. But I enjoyed it. Once it hit the middle of the cigar, the flavors pretty much settled in and stayed there. They didn't change that much. They didn't evolve that much to that after that point. But the strength did pick up a little bit. An absolutely fantastic cigar. And it reminds me that I need to go back and revisit some of the LFDs. I just don't smoke a whole lot of them. But I've had some of the double Corojos and those in my humidor before, and I forget how much I really enjoyed those. So I need to go back and revisit that line a little bit.
What do you think in terms of price to quality?
Well, in terms of price to quality, this was a $9 cigar. And for a cigar that small, like this is literally 4.5 inches by 52, so it's not a big cigar for $9. That's a pretty steep expectation. It was worth every bit of the money.
Wow.
It was a great experience, so I give it a solid 5. I'd love to give it bigger, but it was such a small cigar. It is beautiful, though.
Yeah.
Now, that being said, you can get the next size up for almost the same price,
right,
but it's not the Perfecto, and the Perfectos are always a little more expensive because they're a harder roll.
You know. Yeah,
so I think that has a little bit to do with it. So I give it a solid 5. Fantastic cigar, and kudos to La Flor Dominica.
I smoked something that I haven't smoked one in a while. Back before the show even started, Camacho was one of my go-to brands.
Yeah, old school,
really liked it. Christian Arroyo was the guy that blended the early Camacho, but then the company sold. And
before that, those triple Maduros were just that, and the MX2 were my absolute go-tos.
So when the company sold,
MX2 was not it. Sorry,
that's a CAO.
Yeah,
you're thinking CAO, but it was a similar style to what Christian was blending at the time.
Yes.
When it sold, they stopped using as good a tobacco, and they ran into some construction problems, and I actually stopped smoking Camachos completely. It just wasn't worth the price. They also went up, I think, a little bit. But like everything,
giant labels.
Yeah, but like everything,
isn't that how it goes?
Like everything, if your sales go down, and I'm sure they did, you got to reassess. And so I thought, it's been long enough. Let's go see how they're doing. And so I smoked the Camacho Distillery Edition Ecuador. And the Distillery Edition cigars, they take their regular line and they basically age some of the tobacco in bourbon barrels for charred bourbon barrels. Actually, they use an Ecuadorian Habano wrapper, Brazilian Mata Fina binder, along with this barrel-aged Corojo, and a Dominican Pel de Oro filler, and they put it all together in Honduras. So it's, they basically touch almost all of the cigar-producing regions with this. And the Corojo tobacco in these cigars is aged for 6 months in charred bourbon barrels. The pre-light on this was very rich, very earthy, and had a hint of that charring from the barrels. You could tell there was just a little something extra going on. I used a punch, lit it nice and easily. First few puffs, very peppery, kind of like a Nicaraguan cigar will do on the first few puffs, but that settled down pretty quick, and the rich earthiness was there from really the very beginning. A toasty oak flavor that added to the complexity. It actually gave me the feeling that I was smoking a more expensive cigar than what this was. Just the vibe of it as you're smoking, you're like, this really smokes from a flavor standpoint, like a very expensive cigar. I also picked up a light citrus note. There was some nuttiness, and the cigar left a really pleasing tang kind of on the top of my tongue as I smoked it. I really enjoy cigars that do that, and this one was one of those. It did develop a little bit of an uneven burn early on, required some touching up. Not a big deal, but it wasn't a perfect burn either. This was a $10 cigar, but smoking it gave me the sense, like I said, that it was much more expensive. And so that's why, despite the burn issues, I'm going to give this thing a 7.
Nice.
It was, and our price to quality index, a 5 means you get exactly what you paid for.
Okay.
If you give something less than a 5, it's like, yeah, it wasn't quite worth the money. You give something more than a 5, it means it performed outside its weight class, or what do you call it? Punching above its weight class. Thank you.
I like that.
That's a Conor McGregor reference. But despite the burn issues, I'm going to give it a 7. That means two things. It felt like I was smoking more like a $14 plus cigar. That's the experience that I had.
So premium cigar smoking like a super premium.
Very much. And then, given that Camacho had some real issues a few years back, I will also say that, at least for me, they're definitely back in a big way. This was a good cigar.
That makes me want to go back and pick up a couple of the old Camachos and give them a try.
Yes, I want to go back now and try their regular line and see how that's holding up. Because
I had their American barrel aged, the one with the orange around.
That's the Connecticut wrapper.
Connecticut
I think.
wrapper,
yeah, and I think you reviewed that on the show as well. So I was hopeful that this would turn out really well, and it really did. So okay, we're gonna take a quick break. We're gonna come back and do a little whiskey tasting as well as some beer tasting, and find out more about Heaven's Door, the whiskey that is I think in some of the most decorative bottles I've seen for a whiskey. These bottles are terrific. So we'll be right back. It's Smokin' and Toastin' show number 176, halfway to 200. Welcome back. It's Smokin' and Toastin', show number 176. We're brought to you by B&B Butchers and Restaurant, 1814 Washington Ave in Houston, and in the shops at Clear Fork in Fort Worth. Ian, you and I were having a discussion with some guys in the cigar lounge earlier today about favorite restaurants and stuff, and I totally should have said, oh my God, B&B, because the steaks are wonderful, but the bacon, oh my God, it's a religious
Austin,
experience.
Have you been to B&B?
I haven't. I'm actually from Houston, but I live in Dallas, so I don't get to enjoy the beauty of my
Well,
city.
The next time
they have one in Fort Worth now. It's in the shops at
really?
Clear Fork. So you might, or the next time you're here, go and have dinner. But whatever you do, order the Chef Tommy's Bacon appetizer. It's life-changing.
Okay.
It's life-changing.
And because we told you on here during a work event for you should be able to work expense that. Right?
I mean, I feel like that's very doable.
Right, yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Good. I like it. So
Bob Dylan would have wanted it that way.
Austin Millspaugh is in the studio with us today. Austin is with Heaven's Door Whiskey. So there's been a number of celebrity endorsed or celebrity owned or partially owned products that have come out in the spirit world and the beer world over the last 5-10 years.
Are you talking about Lincoln cars?
No, no. But Matthew McConaughey is in on a whiskey.
Yeah, he does. He is in on a whiskey.
But you almost expect when celebrities come out and they're doing a whiskey or
They've
a
done
spirit.
wine too. A lot of them have
wine.
done wine.
Sure, yeah. Dave Matthews has a wine, and who's big into wine and has his own winery is Maynard from Tool.
Yeah.
Has his own.
He's been very successful.
Yes, done very well. But you almost expect when you hear that a celebrity has a product, you expect it to be a Matthew McConaughey or a George Clooney or one of those sort of Hollywood matinee type guys.
The current trending.
When you hear that Bob Dylan has a whiskey, you have to kind of stop and reassess, because this Bob Dylan is he's as authentic as you could possibly be, right? As a musician, as a songwriter, as a historical figure, quite frankly. So you got to figure Bob Dylan's not just going to let you use his name on your whiskey and pocket the money. That can't be what it's about for him.
He's kept his name
not
integrity pretty solid. Like he hasn't gone out there and endorsed a whole bunch of things.
The only thing I'll say is his Christmas album cracked me up. For a guy that's essentially not someone you'd expect to be celebrating Christmas, and then it's hilarious. It's so non-Bob Dylan-esque. But definitely worth owning, by the way. I recommend it highly, but don't expect your usual Christmas album. Anyway, but the whiskey, when we heard that he had a whiskey, I was like, okay, there's got to be something going on here, because Bob don't need the money, is what I'm getting at. You know what I mean? This is not a cash grab.
His bills are paid.
Right. That's what I'm figuring. When you ride all along the Watchtower, you're going to be doing all right. So this has got to be something that he had some personal passion for, I'm guessing.
Completely. Yeah. So I mean, when this whole thing came about, we're kind of talking about the collaboration with our master blender Ryan Perry and Bob Dylan, and that's what created this brainchild. So Ryan Perry started working for large whiskey companies like Diageo. We've all heard of that company. Sure. Left and then started working for Angel's Envy, a whiskey that we know very well.
Great whiskey, yeah.
Then after he moved on, he was looking to kind of create something his own way. Then also found out Bob Dylan was really interested. He was kind of a whiskey enthusiast already, wanted to have something that was very much tailored to his flavor profiles and something that he found someone they both really cared about. So they kind of met, took a couple times to meet actually before they kind of agreed upon how they were going to go about it.
Think how intimidating that would be. You can be a master distiller, but I'm going to a meeting, I'm going to sit down with Bob Dylan. I would be intimidated.
Well, I mean, it was quite a few meetings. I'll say Ryan Perry, a person who I don't see get intimidated often, was probably very. But yeah, like I said, they came together, and it took about 5-ish years to kind of come up with the brand and the concept of it. As you said, it's a very decadent bottle. So this is kind of paying homage to Bob as one of our investors and owners. He actually makes these gates from kind of found materials and auctions them off. And
so that's what the design on the front of the
these are
bottles
actual
is.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that.
Wow.
These are actual
cool.
gates he's made. He auctions them off, and then whatever they're purchased for, he gives it all to charity. So that's just kind of his way of
all
giving
different
back.
On each one of the
each one of the
expressions.
Yep. Well, that's
cool.
really cool. So I'm assuming then that there was a process over this 5 years where they would blend things, taste it, decide what they liked, what they didn't like, go back to the drawing board a little bit.
One of my favorite, I always call this one our master blender's choice, is our double barrel. That was a big one between Ryan Perry and Bob Dylan and a couple other of our investors, talking about what whiskeys they liked, what they did well, what they thought they fell short on, and what we could do as a brand to bring forward what we thought a proper blended whiskey should taste like. And I think this one's kind of one of our loud voices.
Is Bob Dylan's position with the whiskey, is it something that does he kind of downplay it, or is it something that he's like, all in terms of being associated with it on a publicity level?
He does as he wants, because it's Bob Dylan. I mean, this is a man who got a Nobel Peace Prize for literature and goes, "You can send it to me, I'm busy." But he's as involved as he wants to be, and sometimes it's quite a bit, sometimes it's a little less, and it's just kind of how he feels where he needs to be.
But he doesn't have an issue with people basically identifying this as Bob Dylan's whiskey.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
I mean, we have his signature on the back of the bottle hidden, and
that's very cool.
It's very little hidden secrets, celebrating him and thanking him for letting us create really beautiful juice.
Well, ordinarily we start with a beer, but I think we should start with whiskey today.
Should we?
Yeah, and you've
I'm
actually
not mad at
already
this. I already poured them, so we'll go
done a
with
pour.
this
I'm down
So,
with that.
yeah.
So the first one you guys reviewed is the Tennessee Straight Bourbon. So we don't put age statements on our whiskey because whiskey was originally blended for taste and consistency, and because we talk about whiskey as being a blended whiskey, even though this one is a straight bourbon, unfiltered, high rye, high corn. We just don't feel like you need to chase the age. It's more of, enjoy the juice and drink it any way you see fit.
And that's become much more of
The no age statement
yeah.
has been a much more present trend.
And it's interesting because there's, going back with whiskey, particularly when you're talking Scotch and some of the other whiskey expressions. I mean, age statements were such a big deal. And now it just feels like, this is this is an era when people are more concerned about, like you said, What does the juice taste like?
Yeah.
Where does it come? That seems to be the thing. So,
well, I think it's across the board too. I think that whiskey has had such an explosion too that it's becoming more popular. So therefore, the age statements are a little harder to get because for you to have an age statement, say 10 years, you had to have thought that this was going to happen 10 years ago, and a lot of people didn't.
And that has to be the youngest whiskey in the bottle.
Yes.
Too.
Oh, to have that age statement,
right, to have that age statement. So it gives you, you're right, it gives you a big waiting period before you can take something to market, even if you're only going to age it, 5 years,
But I have learned past general wisdom, that the age statement matters less and less on some of these.
Yes, I think you're right.
This is an outstanding bourbon right here. The notes of you can taste the oak is huge in this. The vanilla is huge in this. The heat is so interesting because the heat comes in about the middle of the palate, but it's just a warm thing that follows all the way through, and then just lingers a little bit in such a nice way.
And I'd say a lot of that is because our small grain, which usually tend to be kind of tertiary complexity adders to your large grain, we use them because it is an unfiltered bourbon. We use them as kind of co-stars so that you'll get that texture from your large grain, your corn, that'll kind of blend over to the rye and the barley that add that spice, which makes something that sits at 90 proof almost seem a little hotter because of the spice of the finish. But it's the concept of doing that.
Where is the distillery located for?
We are currently in the middle of breaking ground, fingers crossed, in July in downtown Nashville. So we will be about 4 blocks from the NFL draft pad where it was.
Nice.
And we will be the only distillery in the city proper.
That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. And Nashville's such a happening place right now.
Oh, it's beautiful.
So much going on there. So it deserves a distillery of this stature. So.
I love the nose on this.
It really is great, isn't it?
The mineral water plus vanilla plus. I mean, what else am I getting in there? There's almost a.
I always get a little bit of toasted caramel, not
caramel.
the sweet bright, but more of kind of like a burnt sugar.
And the corn definitely comes through as well, like the sweet corn.
Tiny hint of cinnamon on the finish. You can get. But it's just a very well-rounded. When you start talking about that many flavors in the flavor profile of a bourbon, that's when you really got to feel like you're onto something, because some great whiskeys are much more straightforward.
Yeah.
And this has got a lot going on, and I think that's to its credit because, again, you're not talking an age statement bottle here. You're talking about something that, how old is this likely to be?
So I was waiting for that question. I knew it was going to get asked.
It's going to happen at some point.
This sits at about 7 years old. So it's not too young, but it's not too old either. It kind of sits in a really pretty spot that we think really plays with the proof.
Okay.
I always say this juice specifically is kind of our critique on Tennessee whiskey with a little bit of nod to Kentucky since we unfilter it.
Right. It's really good. It's really good. I got to tell you, this is this to me is just about the standard for celebrity spirits. If you can't do it this well,
George
don't
Clooney?
do it. Yeah. Well, look, I'd be happy to have George on to talk about anything he's got going on, because he's George Clooney. But I
just rewatched Oh Brother We're Out There last night.
Yeah, see.
He's so good in that.
By the way, my favorite George Clooney movie is Oh Brother Where Art Thou. That is like one of the greatest movies ever. He's so good in it. Watching him sing all that bluegrass stuff.
It's hilarious. The dance he does when they're at the political rally
is wonderful.
Just cracks me up.
Oh, that's wonderful. And John Turturro, come on.
Yeah.
He could do a whiskey. He could do a whiskey. But seriously, though, I think this is kind of the standard bearer for a celebrity, certainly for a celebrity whiskey. I really do. If you can't do it this good, guys, wait and endorse something else.
Yeah.
That's my thought process anyway. Ian, let's jump in and taste some beer real quick before this segment runs too long. Let me give you some cups.
Pass these on down.
I don't know how Kolsch is gonna pair with a bourbon, but this will be a very interesting thing to see.
This is an aggressive-looking can.
It's a beautiful can.
It's got
Anchorage
this
is
kind of ethereal-looking dog gnashing at the sky, maybe.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot of dogs and wolves in the can art for Anchorage. I don't know if that's just an Alaska
Could be a wolf.
thing.
Yeah, well, I mean, Alaska's got wolves, right?
Yeah, but and mooses. What is plural for moose? Mooses, I think.
Moose, actually.
Oh, moose.
There's many
it's
moose.
one
Like
moose.
you can have one moose
Yeah.
or 1,000 moose.
I think. I don't know. I'm guessing on that.
I think it's a gaggle of moose.
Gaggle of moose. I like that
mooses.
one.
That was a nice little sound
Had a little
effect.
delay.
Yeah,
action
it
going
was a
on there.
little delay. I like
You
that.
heard the foam come up. That was gorgeous.
And let's pour one for Adam too. This is a Kolsch, so this is going to be a bit lighter, and it's going to be.
I poured that first one a little bit on the hard side, so it's got a little foam.
All right, thank you, sir. Chris Hart would be proud.
He'd be
and happy.
proud, right?
Speaking of Chris, by the way, we have invited him to come on the show. And Alan, if you're out there,
I already talked to him.
today-
He's in.
He's in. Okay. So on the 19th, we'll be doing a whiskey blind tasting on the show, which we've never done before, a blind tasting. So this will be a lot of fun to do. And Chris has been invited. Alan's been invited because he's fun to hang out with. Chris has been invited because he now has been established as a whiskey expert.
It's in literature.
It's been written, and he's been described that way in print. So once it's in print, it has to be true.
This beer smells refreshing and fruity.
Just like if it's on Wikipedia, it's true if it's on Wikipedia, right?
That's right. It's all.
I read it on the internet.
it's
It
all
has to be true. This does smell very fruity, doesn't it?
refreshing and fruity is what I'm smelling right
I'm
now.
looking forward to this.
Let's see what the can says. It says brewed and dry hopped with Citra, Galaxy, and
Mosaic?
Motueka, something like that.
Okay. Well,
if you know how to say that.
I've already done a little research here, Ian.
Yeah.
And I will tell you, this is a much more complex Kolsch than I think I've ever tried before. Way more going on here.
The smell would almost lead you to think it's a lighter IPA, but it doesn't drink like it at all. It's definitely Kolsch. It's definitely...
It finishes like a Kolsch, for
It's
sure.
very round and full-bodied in the middle of the palate on this. Like, it comes across big right in the middle of the palate and then finishes...
big fruit notes going on.
It's got a really strong citrus front, which I really appreciate.
But it finishes dry with a hint of malt.
I'm just going to say, you really can't go wrong with Anchorage Brewing.
Yeah.
These guys have really produced some excellent beers.
Yeah, I could drink much of this.
Well, we were saying earlier, their Christmas stuff is amazing.
Yeah, their Christmas sale is so good every year. There's always the same bottle, but a different beer. Like, you never know what it's going to...
This is just wonderful.
For those of you watching us drink, this is fantastic.
What's the ABV on that?
It's 5%.
Oh, that's not bad at all.
So it's not super low, but
pretty
it's also
crushable
not,
though. Yeah,
not big.
Yeah, anytime you're under, under 7, I feel like it's a fairly.
I like
sessionable-ish.
Sessionable-ish, yes.
This has a slightly bitter aftertaste that I really, really like, much like an ESB has a lot of times.
It kind of takes that Kolsch finish and just gives you that little tiny bit of bitterness to it. It's good.
I agree.
It's good. All right, I tell you what, we're trying to keep our segments more in line from a time standpoint, so we will take a break here. That's very good, and that can art is just stellar, just absolutely stellar. So we'll take a break. We'll come back. We'll do a little more whiskey tasting, and we'll talk about the good news and bad news for premium cigars. That is on the way next. You are checking out Smoking and Toasting. We'll be right back. So we've got 3 and 3, and there are 3 sauces there. Welcome back. It's Smoking and Toasting, where all music is used by permission. And you are checking out show number 176, halfway to 200.
Halfway to 200.
We are in the studio with Bob Dylan's Heaven's Door Whiskey on the program today, and we'll be tasting some more of that in just a few moments. Ian, it was a good news, bad news week for premium cigars when it comes to legislation.
All right, are you going to give me good news first and then depress me with the bad news?
Yes,
or are you going to knock me down with the bad news and then pick me up with the good news?
I like that one better.
Good news first in this case.
Okay.
because it'll be hard to explain the bad news without explaining the good news.
All right.
All right. So the U.S. House of Representatives passed a bill the day after our show last week. So I'd like to think that we may have had something to do with it.
We may have pushed that a little
because
bit.
the show is, in fact, world famous.
Yes.
Hi,
Mom.
We are, by the way, Austin, I explained that I was never comfortable with calling the show world famous until my mom, who doesn't smoke or drink, knew about it. And once she knew that it existed, I feel totally comfortable now in saying we must be world famous.
I'm trying to imagine my mom's friends talking about this show.
If my mom's no, I can imagine my mom and her friends talking about it, and it won't be glowing reviews. She'll be right up there with that guy that I read 1/3 of his reviews, and that's the only review I've ever read. Anyway, the House of Representatives passed a bill last Friday that it's designed to curtail youth use of tobacco products, which is what this whole thing has been about with the FDA and this legislation, including banning all flavored tobacco products as well as internet and catalog sales of all tobacco products. However, one segment was exempt from the rules: premium cigars. There's your good news.
Yay!
Yeah, that's. No, see, that's
the bomb.
Oh, the bomb. Okay, I get it. Okay, so the first time ever, the House officially recognized that premium cigars exist and they are a unique tobacco category. As they passed this bill, it's H.R. 2339, which basically gives an exemption for premium cigars. It's not perfect, but Drew Newman from J.C. Newman Cigar Company says it's not perfect, but it's a historic bill and is a huge step forward for the premium cigar industry. And now, the bad news. The bill says that the definition of a premium cigar is one that includes a minimum retail price of $12. So that means the cigar I smoked today would not be considered a premium cigar. The one that I gave a 7 on the price to quality scale.
A premium cigar should be basically a hand-rolled cigar.
I think that's where the definition should be.
It should be.
If it's hand-rolled.
Handcrafted.
Right, a
yes,
handcrafted.
that should be a premium cigar.
So basically what the people from the tobacco industry, from the cigar industry are saying about this is that the good news is better than the bad news because it sets us up with what we really... If premium cigars were not recognized as a category that could be held exempt from these things, then there's no way to even go forward.
Does that mean all cigars in New York are premium cigars?
Oh, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. All cigars in New York. So you can go to New York to buy any cigar you want. But if you think about it, if you were ordering from Cigars International or JR Cigar, if this legislation stands as it's written, the lowest price cigar you could buy would be $12. Yeah, so much for those $1.60 a piece bundles that they have. But the people in the cigar industry are saying, look, it's a good thing. This gives us more time to work on.
Okay, so the biggest news about this, though, is the fact that it is recognized as a separate thing. And so we can start working from there at least. I mean, it sucks that we have to go from such a backwards place, but at least that's something, right?
It's Washington, Yeah. It's all backwards.
Yeah.
It's all
they will
backwards.
just beat you down with paperwork until you give up.
So you know what? We're just gonna celebrate
the same thing to distillers. Trust me.
Yeah. We're gonna celebrate the good news. That's what we're gonna do, and we're gonna cross our fingers that we get to a better place on the other.
So after that beer, by the way,
yes,
this whiskey, as my palate was accustomed to the beer, this whiskey becomes malty and cinnamony and with a hint of chocolate on the end.
Yes, it's a really interesting thing that happens to it, and I was not convinced that the Kolsch and the whiskey would work well together, and I was wrong.
Oh, yeah.
They work very well together.
Oh, you know what I didn't do is I didn't go back to the Kolsch, so I'm going to try that.
Any excuse to try a little more of the Kolsch is probably
I'm going
a good
to pass
one.
that right on to you.
I actually was kind of hoping they would go well together because of that little bit of dry notes in a Kolsch, that little bit of spice in the Tennessee Straight Bourbon.
You're absolutely right.
They go both directions. Now, it does take the Kolsch and lead it a little more citrusy. You get a little more of the citrus stuff coming on. Mm-hmm. But it's still delicious. Mm-hmm. It's interesting. This Kolsch is so citrusy that it makes me feel like a lot of IPAs have that real citrus note that this has. Share a lot of it.
Yeah.
But then it's not an IPA. It doesn't taste
finish,
like an IPA.
It doesn't
really
finish
weird,
at all like an IPA. Right.
Is it weird? It has a zing like a goes.
Yeah,
because you get
really
that kind
does.
of
a little bit, but no
from,
sour.
Yeah, not
right.
sour.
So,
but the zing is there.
The zing is there.
And then and I love that little bitter finish. That bitter finish they have me at the finish.
Austin Millspaugh is here with Heaven's Door. Austin, what are we trying next?
So the next one we're trying is our double barrel. It'll be this beautiful bottle right here.
Yeah, let's put that up on this.
Okay, now this is the one you mentioned was kind of the, I don't know, you didn't say secret weapon, but that was kind of what I heard you say.
Yeah, it's kind of on that point. I always say this is our master blender's choice kind of situation, labeling that's not there. It was definitely a collaboration through Bob Dylan, Ryan Perry, our master blender, and a few other trusted palates, talking about whiskey and what they thought was good, what they thought was unsuccessful, and how they wanted our whiskey to taste.
So it's a double barrel whiskey. How is it made?
So it's essentially 2 Tennessee whiskeys, an unfinished rye, all then blended together and placed in another barrel for an additional year. So essentially 3 whiskeys in 4 barrels.
3 whiskeys, 4 barrels. It makes sense because each whiskey is in a barrel by itself,
and then
they are blended, and then one barrel to marry.
On the nose, you pick up so much more wood.
Yes, definitely,
and
definitely.
And the spice. This one almost smells cinnamony, and that might be the influence from the previous whiskey. But
there is a fresh dump barrel that it's poured into. So we do at a certain portion of the process place our blend in a 12-year-old fresh dumped barrel. So what
does that mean exactly?
So when essentially they're dumping, say, this 12-year-old barrel for bottling, before it has a chance for the staves to dry, we fill that with our blend. What that's doing is continuing the extraction process from the staves because they don't have a chance to dry. Right. But also you get a little bit of micro-dosing from the bourbon that's actually soaked into the staves. And that just adds a little bit of complexity to the whiskey itself. I always say that the percentage of rye is kind of like bitters in a cocktail. It's there to balance and uphold complexity. That finishing barrel is there to kind of just round everything out and kind of bring it all to fruition.
Ian, your thoughts?
Man, if you can call a bourbon juicy, like this makes my mouth water. It's the chocolate notes in this are just how.
And you wouldn't realize it's 100 proof.
Yeah, not even.
But that's because of the barrels.
The interesting thing is the way the heat hits you on the previous expression was right about in the middle of the expression, right about in the middle of the palate, and then it just kind of flowed. It was a smooth heat. It wasn't like it's smooth. No, it was like
it wasn't Jägermeister smooth. It was real smooth. Right.
No, it was really pretty smooth. This right here, though, you don't even notice the heat until after you set the glass down, and then it comes back as a whiskey hug and just wraps its arms around you. Yeah,
yes,
it's really, really interesting how well it does that. And then the caramel and chocolate flavors just leap out at me big time on this.
And by the way, it should also be noted that you cannot contract the coronavirus from a whiskey hug.
That's right.
Yeah, it's completely and totally safe.
Because you don't want a whiskey fist bump. That's for sure.
No, you definitely don't. You want a hug.
You want a true hug.
You want a hug. Come on over here and give me a hug.
I've had whiskey fist bumps before. It's not pleasant. Yeah, though this by the way, for anyone listening, the whiskey hug is that warm feeling that comes back
generally after the finish.
After the finish. Yeah.
Right.
So we're not totally weird, but
we are.
It can be awkward.
But that's still what the whiskey is. We are going to do smoking and toasting shirts that say the whiskey hug. That's awkward.
I definitely need to
That's
get one
awkward.
of those.
Yeah.
Hey, we got a comment. We got a comment on our feed that's in a completely different language.
Whoa, I see that.
Awesome.
I don't know what to say about that. I'm just gonna.
Actually, I can.
Is there a Google Translate?
Actually, I can read that
language. I'm gonna
language.
like it, and I hope it's.
Actually, no, I can read that language. It says, "Unhappy with your penis size? Click here." So,
I didn't just click that.
This is delicious, and this is so different in its flavor profile from the first.
Now, does this start from the same distillate? Or is this a completely different mash bill?
It's completely different mash bill.
Okay.
So when you start with your Tennessee straight bourbon, it's It's 70% corn, 22 rye, 8 malted barley, obviously unfiltered. When you go into our double barrel, our Tennessee whiskey is actually 84 corn, 8 rye, 8 malted barley.
Okay.
Both whiskeys are, and they also sit in 2 level 4 char barrels. Then when you're talking about our rye, it's a 95 rye, 5 malted barley, unfinished, and it's about 10 to 12% in that blend. So like I said, it's there as bitters in a cocktail.
Very high rye.
It is.
Yeah, but it's wonderful. And it doesn't, I'm sometimes not as fond of rye whiskeys as I am of other, because sometimes that rye flavor I feel like can just kind of push everything else out of the way.
Become really polarizing.
Yeah, become really, really polarizing. This is not that at all. Now, I realize this is not the rye, so
Right.
we will try the rye. But this is like, it really, really works in this blend is what I'm trying to get to, is that it really has the right amount of complexity to it.
The
and
rye
that's
adds the spice,
It
I think,
adds,
yeah.
yes.
It
It
gives that little
absolutely
bit
adds.
of kind of kick right before the sip goes down the throat, in my opinion.
And the whiskey hug is wonderful.
Yes.
It is wonderful.
I have to say, I like the first expression, the Tennessee bourbon. It's very good. This, though, I want to wear this like cologne. Like, this is so good.
Yeah, it really is. And so what I think we're going to do is we're going to actually take a break and just do this in the segment. When we come back, we will taste this IPA that I think has a good shot of being, I'm excited about it. Old Nation Brewing Company is very well respected. They're out of Michigan, and we have their M43 New England IPA. Plus, we have another expression, the rye, still
Yes.
to taste. And then you mentioned that you brought something special.
There's a little bit
for
of
the
a
last
surprise for the
segment.
very last,
but
yes.
you have not told us.
I'm not
what
saying
it is.
anything. It's hidden in the room already, too, so
You got Bob Dylan waiting outside.
I wish.
He's going to come in and talk to us about the whiskey. Oh, man.
That would be awesome. But
That would be awesome.
I mean, I brought the hat. That's kind of what I got.
You know what? And it's working. It's working for you.
I'll take it.
All right, we'll take a break. We'll be right back. Smoking and Toasted is show number 176. We are in the studio with Bob Dylan's whiskey. It's called Heaven's Door, and it's really good.
So I was going to say with these, I always think of the weird idea of front, middle, and finish. It's a very
Welcome back. It's Smoking and Toasting. It's show number 176. All music used by permission. These guys are some buddies of mine from Louisiana. They're called Squint. That's the name of the band, and that's a really cool song of theirs called Quite. And thank you, boys, for allowing us to use this on the show. Can we talk about the suffrage thing, or should we not?
Well, I need to follow up with John. He's he's a trumpet player for the Suffers. I need to
And
follow
he's
up with
really,
him.
really good, by the way.
Yes. He's when I've played with him over the years. He's a great jazz trumpet player, and I reached out to him. So we're gonna talk to the Suffers about letting us use their music on here.
And we also want to invite John and any of the other band members that want to come on the show and do some tasting.
Yes,
because that would be
and
fun.
I will impart all of that information.
Okay, good. That'll be awesome. So we love the Suffers. We were using their music before, but
Yes.
now all music must be used by permission.
And John was pretty excited. I don't foresee any issue with that, but he wanted to talk to the rest of the band. And,
Of course.
and
That
then we're
makes
going to
sense.
send him a sample so he can
Yep.
check it out. And, see
and
what
they
we're
own their
doing.
masters, so they can say one way or another.
I want to talk about this swag.
Yes, this is really cool because
I'm
Austin
holding
brought
this
us
up to the
several of
camera
these.
here.
Now, this is, first of all, these are not exactly alike. You gave us each several of them.
Yes.
But they look different slightly.
So each one of these were actually, we always work with a bunch of blacksmiths for some of our events. You guys probably saw ours at the Houston Whiskey Society.
Which, by the way, Houston Whiskey Social, best spirits event ever.
Oh, it was amazing.
It
You
is
guys
wonderful.
you guys were right out there by the cigar area. by
And
the
we
cigar
kept
lounge.
hearing this clang,
Yeah.
clang, and that was your dude. Your
And
black-
that's how so I walked by and I spoke with one of your cohorts there, one of your coworkers, and was telling him about the show. And I was like, he goes, "Have you tried the whiskey?" I said, "Yes, we've had actually the Tennessee bourbon on the show. You know, we bought a bottle and tried it." And he's like, "Oh man, we'd love to get on there." And that's how we
Right.
ended
Thanks,
up getting
Jordan.
them. But you guys had like a primo spot because everybody that wanted to walk outside for a minute to get away from the crowd went by there. Anybody who was smoking a cigar went by there. You guys were hopping the whole time.
Oh yeah, I don't think we ever stopped.
Yeah,
and the clang kept ringing out from the blacksmith when people came over to see what it was, and it was actually very cool. So your blacksmith actually made these.
So he made
each one's
these are
individual
cigar pokes.
Yeah,
and they're to be used so you can poke the end of your cigar
and smoke it without
versus cutting it.
So if you get a really, really good cigar, you want to smoke it down to the nub. That's when I love.
There's
these.
actually a couple ways you can use it. So one is to poke the end so you can smoke it. That's to open up the end so you can use it instead of a punch or a cut. The other way is, and I'll probably take one of these and sharpen the end a little bit to do this, is to punch the smallest part of the cigar so that you can smoke it. And it doesn't burn your fingers.
Yeah, I heard that. I didn't know if that was true, so I didn't.
Yes, absolutely.
No, that's a real thing.
So our favorite cigars, we have a tendency to call them finger burners because they're so good down to the nub that your fingers are getting warm by the time you put them out.
And frankly, I don't have dainty fingers.
Yeah,
so.
well, yeah, nor do I. And you know what else these could be used for? If you were a superhero and you could like throw these really fast, they would be a really cool weapon. Am I geeking out? I'm sorry. I apologize. No, but these are just. I love I love that they're handmade and they're all like just a little different from each other. And what is the emblem that's stamped in the top there?
So that is actually our Heaven's Door logo.
Okay,
If you notice on the bottles, you'll see them
on the back of the bottle,
there on the top, a little bit on the back as well.
So much going on the bottle that it. But that's an H and a D, Heaven's Door.
Yes, it is.
I love it.
He actually went out and got kind of a custom stamp just to do that, just for us.
I love that.
Nice.
We love our blacksmiths.
Ian, let's try some M43. This is the first IPA I think that we've tried with a numerical and
if you're going to make
alphabetic designation. So very excited about that. Yes, you need some cups. Here's some cups.
Thank you, sir.
One for Adam. Well, that was again a great sound effect, Ian. You're really killing it over there.
The label on this looks a little bit like newspaper, doesn't it?
It actually has.
I think that's the vibe they're going for. Maybe.
Yeah, you know what? It actually makes me think of like this was an experimental brew.
Yeah, well, this is definitely a generic can that they stuck a label on. A lot of breweries will do that because we don't know what we're going to put in the can next time, so we'll print labels for them.
With this trend of so many breweries doing limited release things and changing it up regularly, and that's certainly what this gives me the impression of.
You don't get the beautiful printed can, but you get the printed label on the can because you don't know what's going to go in the next can. So this says New Orthodox India Pale Ale Series M43.
So it's part of a series.
New England IPA. 6.8 alcohol by volume, IBU 65, 1 pint.
Wow.
So it says malt, Pilsner malt, wheat malt, oat malt. Let's see. Hops. The boil hops, Calypso, Amarillo, Citra, and then the dry hops.
That's what it is. It's the Amarillo that gives that citrus note.
Citra, Amarillo, and Simcoe hops. Okay, it says keep cold, drink fresh, and it says haze is good. So Old Nation Brewing Company. I haven't tried it yet.
I'm already there.
And when I opened the can, it wasn't a huge thing on the nose.
It is definitely a juicy IPA. It's very orange, juicy, little hint of grapefruit.
I want to point something out to you, Cruz. On the side of this can, it says "Don't freak out," and then it has a thing that says "sediment" and what you can do about it.
Yes.
I know
sediment
tends to freak you out a little bit in beer.
No, let me correct you.
Because I've poured beers that have had sediment.
No, let me correct you. I do not freak out at sediment. I freak out at chewy chunks in my beer. Sediment is different. Sediment lines the bottom of the glass, and you can tell that there's some some hop powder in there.
Look,
but.
Beer is good when it sticks to your teeth.
You can't chew sediment.
All you gotta do is roll it, and you're good to go.
That's the thing.
Distribution,
and I think that's what they explain on the can is that you can roll the can, kind of gently roll the can,
like your German
and it distributes.
license.
Yes, and it distributes the.
It's
the
like
sediment.
a bitter orange juice.
It's really wonderful.
Really pretty good.
It's delicious. It's delicious.
It's interesting, and it has a grapefruit finish to it as well, like a grapefruit bitter finish.
Very much
and I'm a fan of grapefruit juice, by the way. So
yes, I like it too.
this finish is like a good grapefruit juice.
I get a little orange up front, and the finish is all grapefruit.
it's simply orange, simply grapefruit stuff.
Oh, yes. This is from Williamston, Michigan, Old Nation Brewing Company. I got to say, I don't know.
Good job.
I don't really know. I know you have like a brother that lives in Michigan. I don't know how people live there because like the weather seems to me like it is constantly conspiring against you. But that said, they've got some great
I was just
breweries.
hanging out with my cousin from there
Great
just the
breweries
other night,
in Michigan.
actually.
Do you have a brother or a cousin that lives there?
Oh, I have many cousins that live there.
Oh, okay. I mean,
As a matter of fact,
in the summer it's beautiful. I realize this, but you got to go through those winters. Wow.
yeah, it gets cold up there. My parents
maybe
were actually
it's-
from there, so I have a
Cold
lot
is
of
an
family.
understatement. Everything's buried in snow and ice, and people still live. It
Yeah, they
boggles
do.
my mind.
They go, I'm going to go shovel a whole bunch of snow so I can drive over to Old Nation Brewing Company.
Well,
and have
unlike
some,
Texas, when it
some
snows up there,
M43.
when it snows up there, they don't drive their cars directly into the side of a bridge.
This is true. This is true. People do know how to drive in the snow there. Here in Texas, we're based in Houston. Here in Texas, no one knows how to drive
On the
in the
rare
snow.
occasion that it snowed, like one of the funniest things, and funny, sad, but funny too, is when the snow actually sticks to the ground, which is very, very rare, but it happens. We had about an inch of snow, and we're so not used to it, and we're so unprepared for it. And as I'm driving down the road with my brother, I see car tracks, and every time we come to a bridge crossing, now this could be over a little ravine of some sort or a creek or whatever. Every time we came up to a bridge of some sort, you would see tire tracks that would go off the barricade and back on. And it would go off on each side, like every single one of them.
Yeah.
And like on our trip, there was like 20 different areas like that. You see every single one of them, somebody hit the barricade.
I will mention that I had just a last sip of the last whiskey, and I went back to it after the IPA, and it enhanced the whiskiness of it, if that makes any sense.
I feel like the rye really comes out.
It tasted a little more like intense from a whiskey standpoint. Was actually quite good. IPAs. I'm the IPA fan on the show, and but I'm the first one to admit that they're not as easy to pair with other beverages or cigars.
Actually, so with an IPA, and if you save a little bit of this, you'll see in a minute, they go with rye whiskeys. They don't go.
All right.
They don't go with corn whiskeys as much as they go with rye whiskeys.
Well, guess what? We're about to have some rye whiskey because that's the next one that Austin's going to have for us to taste. Austin,
gonna put that over here.
tell
Oh,
us
get
about your
fresh
rye.
ones, okay.
So I always say our rye, as I say when you talk about our three, it's kind of general statements: your front, your middle, your finish.
Okay.
When you talk about our rye, it starts off being 95% rye, 5% malted barley. And then the whole idea with our ryes, because ryes tend to be polarizing, we wanted to give it a little bit of a finish that kind of gives it this like in between in that spectrum of ryes.
Okay.
So we actually age it for about 6 months to a year in oak from France, in the very south of France, in the Vosges region. We actually, when we make our staves, we air dry them for 3 years, mainly because one, French oak tends to be very tight fibers, so we open those up as they crack and they dry. Also brings in the area's kind of essence, the nosing.
You're going very sciencey.
I get
on this.
really weird
love
with it.
I love it.
I get
I
very
love
weird
it.
with it.
I love
so,
it.
We then build what's called a cigar barrel. So it's a 55-gallon barrel. That's a long and slender and tall.
Long and slender too.
Very
yeah.
different from a normal barrel. We then fill that barrel, and we lose about 10 gallons in the process of soaking in the staves, angel share, but it's that finishing, and because of the surface area to juice, we get a stronger extract of
So
the finish.
for
anybody
with this
listening-
cigar-shaped barrel, there's more surface area. Is that right?
More surface
Okay.
to juice, yes.
For,
So that
for
gives us
anybody
that
listening,
extract.
just a FYI, the angel share that we referred to a few times on here is the amount of liquid that evaporates
Or soaks
over
into
its time.
the barrel.
or
Yeah.
soaks into the
Yep.
barrel itself. Yes.
Right.
And the Angels are pretty happy about it.
And I will always say with this finish, I call it aptly taste the bottle. So Ryan Perry, our master blender, starts tasting in about 6 months.
Right?
And then we'll kind of judge when he wants to taste it again next. And it
Interesting.
continues to go until he
Right.
says it's ready for a bottling.
Right. Very.
And-
So this is not something that It's not set. It's more to his taste, to his palate.
This
right?
is kind of grandma's cooking finishing, where it's
I
like
love
you do
that. I love
you do it the
that.
way you want to do it, and then you know when it's ready, and you know when the pinch is right.
Well, you
It
can
has
tell-
that. It has that specific rye spice right
I
off
was
the bat.
just about to say you can tell on the nose that it's a rye. You can tell right away.
There's a great sweetness that's happening right on the tip of my tongue
That's
after
going to be your
this.
finishing.
And that is just it's almost like a candy sweetness that
Mm-hmm.
happens there. I was not expecting
You
that.
can even detect a little of that on the nose because I was sniffing it as you were saying that, and I was like, "Oh, that's what that is."
It's like candy with a little bit of salt to it. Like it's hard to describe.
Yeah,
I can see where you go with that. I like
Yeah.
that a
It's
lot.
pretty
I like
intense.
that.
Yeah.
you got a good palate, my friend. Like you're good at this. You should. Do
I
a show.
practice.
You should do a show.
I should.
I always say if we didn't try the rye, that sweet would have been more on the back of your tongue, and then would have kind of grown forward. But I think because of us trying the rye, it already started right at the tip of the tongue.
This
Now,
is really, really
As
good.
an interesting thing, because this is good. This is a good rye whiskey. Try your IPA right now.
All right.
And
I've
you'll
got the
find
whiskey
it changes
totally on
it.
my palate.
But it goes with. And it's just something about ryes and IPAs. Like if you're going to have a whiskey back, they just go well together.
Suddenly, I'm getting like this blood orange that
yeah,
I was
very
not
much.
getting
Oh,
before.
wow.
Very much.
That's amazing.
Yeah, that's crazy,
Yeah.
isn't it?
I mean, I always say when you're making a cocktail with a rye, if it's spirit forward, use a lemon zest because the citrus brings out that rye.
Yeah.
And this is kind of perfect because of the amount of citrus in this.
Yeah, yeah.
They play perfectly.
You know, we had Dave Pickerel from Whistle Pig on the
God
show
rest his soul.
before he passed, and he was, it was interesting to talk with him about how he anticipated that rye was coming back.
Yeah.
Like I don't know if a lot of guys would have even believed him, but he bought in totally, put his chips on that side of the table, and wow, has it ever come back? And
wow.
and this is just terrific, just terrific.
Yeah, I did no complaints about this whiskey.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting how well it goes with this.
You complained so much about the previous two, so it's
I know,
good.
I know.
It's good to know that this one has no complaints.
We at
from
least
you.
found one, right? That's why we have 3 core line.
That's right. That's why we do it. All right, we are going to take a break. We're going to come back for our final segment. We have a barley wine to taste from Parish Brewing, and then you mentioned something about a surprise.
A little bit of a surprise.
Plus, I have the big Bob Dylan question coming up in the next segment, so we'll look forward to that. No, it's an easy one. Hopefully you can answer it, but I think it's an important question.
Okay.
As we contemplate Bob's whiskey, Heaven's Door. It's Smoking and Toasting 176. We'll be right back.
Cheers.
In the
Should we pull out the surprise already, or should we wait? Should we pull out the surprise already, or should we?
It's totally up to you. I don't know.
I haven't listened to this in a while.
Unveil it during the segment if you want. Welcome back. It's Smoking and Toasting. We are show number 176, halfway to 200. We're brought to you by B&B Butchers and Restaurant, 1814 Washington Ave in Houston, and in the shops at Clear Fork in Fort Worth, by BB Italia on Memorial in Houston, and of course by the Annie Cafe and Bar on Post Oak Boulevard in Houston. Ian, check it out. What am I doing?
It looks like you're knocking on heaven's door.
I am knocking on heaven's door.
Knock, knock, knock. You know this show couldn't have gone by without that.
Yeah.
I was waiting for it.
I don't know if you know the answer to this question, but I will tell you that I've always wondered what Bob Dylan thought about the Guns N' Roses cover, particularly about the hi, yow.
Wait a second. Did we just get Axel in here? That sounded so close.
Yeah, right. Thank you so much for that. No, but I've always wondered, like, did he think that was cool, or was he like, amateurs?
Well, I'll say the closest I've gotten to Bob Dylan was Beacon Theater in New York,
Yeah,
7 or 8 rows away from the stage.
yep.
No phones allowed, so no photos. Or
Of
you're
course,
thrown
yeah,
out,
yeah,
even
yeah.
if you work for Heaven's Door. We've had someone do that. So I don't know. That's a really good
That's
question.
just something I've always been. That wasn't my Bob Dylan question.
Oh,
my
well,
my
okay.
Bob Dylan question actually was, which of these expressions is his personal favorite? Does
The
he
double
have
barrel.
The double barrel.
I can say that without
Yep.
question.
All right. See,
Wow,
I
that
told
was
you
so
that.
good.
I
That's
told
my
you it'd be
favorite of
easy.
the 3 so
I told
far.
you it'd be
That
easy.
one's easy.
That may be your favorite of the 3, but we do have something very interesting looking sitting on Mr. Twirlygig.
So we like to kind of give a
this
little
is your
treat.
surprise,
This
right?
is my surprise. So this is our 26-year-old bootleg. So when we were creating the brand, Bob Dylan wanted to originally call us bootleg, We kind of thought that meant that had more of a moonshine kind of concept to it.
Sure, that makes sense. Yeah.
So we didn't really want to go in that direction, but realized when we were going to create our limited releases, we feel like that's very apropos for our bootlegs. And this is our first one that's going to kind of expand as long as the brand's alive, and hopefully everyone enjoys it. This is a 26-year-old whiskey aged in Japanese Mizunara, virgin Japanese Mizunara barrels for a year and about 3 to 4 months, so an extra additional month because Ryan Perry wanted to bring it to proper flavor.
Is this available?
This is available. You can find it at a few liquor stores. I'd say your bigger ones, Specs in total, are going to have probably still some of it left.
Yeah, Ian, show the book.
I want to show this packaging.
This is amazing. We talk about packaging. This is some of the best I've ever seen.
This is full-on leather.
Yeah.
It says the bootleg series right on there with.
And if you open it up, it'll tell you what bottle of the series it is.
Oh, nice.
Up for the camera
That is
So
so
at the very
nice.
bottom, it'll tell you what bottle of what series.
Wow.
And then
Wow.
it comes with its own coin in the bottom as well.
So before we get to this one, let
Oh,
me.
I see the coin. Can I pull
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, pull it out.
Let's check that out.
Outside of 3,797, that bottle is 1667.
Nice.
The coin in the bottle.
Nice.
And that bottle was just opened for this show.
Oh,
Oh, see, now I feel special. Don't you feel special, Ian?
Heck yeah.
I feel very special. Let me ask you this before we
This is
get
all
to.
made of ash or oak? It's hard to tell. Ash. Looks
It's
like.
just
it's
beautifully
ash.
done, though. That's craftsmanship, is what that is. That's wonderful. Before we get to this whiskey, let me ask you: the 3 bottles that we tried. What are we talking about in terms of price range for those bottles?
I mean, it varies.
If I'm looking at the liquor store,
When I was at Specs earlier today before I came to the show, your Tennessee Bourbon, your double barrel, we're sitting about $48, $49.
okay,
Usually, if you're going to go to your smaller places, they'll probably raise that only about
little
as
bit,
high as
sure,
like
yeah.
51, 52.
right.
When you look at your rye, it'll probably sit around 68 to about 74.
And so then when we get to something special like this with this
So at-
exquisite packaging, what are we talking about here?
So at Specs, that was about 497. So it'll
497,
range
okay.
from about 490 to about 520.
So
Bob Dylan wrote us a message.
did he? What did he say?
Oh, we're gonna
It
read it.
says, "What would I draw? Well, I guess I would start with whatever was at hand. I sat at the table, took out a pencil and paper, and drew the typewriter, a crucifix, a rose, knives and pins, empty cigarette boxes. I'd lose track of time completely. Not that I thought I was any great drawer, but I did feel like I was putting an orderliness to the chaos around."
Oh, that's so Bob Dylan.
That's very Bob.
And that's actually his painting in the front of the bottle.
That. Oh, is that really? That's
So every
great.
bottling
That's
is
beautiful.
going to pay respect to kind of him.
So will future bottlings have different paintings, basically?
All different paintings.
Oh, that's so cool. So cool. I love it.
We
I
do
love
have
it.
we do have one coming out that might be wheat with a really beautiful finishing as well coming out this year.
Nice. Well, I tell you what.
Just to tease it.
Are you ready to go there?
Ready to try this?
Let's do it.
So
Let's
this
do
is
it.
111.
I'm dying to try this. What do you mean am I ready to try this?
I was going to make you wait. I was going to go to the beer next just to make you wait.
I bet that a barley wine goes well with whatever this is.
does.
Oh, it does.
it does. All right.
As I said, 111.5.
I am actually a little giddy about this one here.
So when
Wow.
we first came out with this, a few of us only got to try it at 8 months, and then finally got to try it to bottle. Ryan Perry thought it wasn't ready, so he extended it by a few months till it was proper flavor to be in
This
the bottle.
smells amazing.
It really does. So tell us again about the juice in this bottle.
So as I said, it's a 25-year-old whiskey,
Mm-hmm.
but the really special part is the finishing. So virgin Japanese Mizunara oak, you can only get that through a bidding process because most of the barrels are only used in Japan. To even build the barrel, the tree has to be a minimum of 200 years old,
Oh my
and
God.
one tree essentially only makes one barrel.
Oh my
So
gosh.
the rarity of the barrels are it's insane.
Do you like oak?
I do like oak.
Do you like chocolate?
I love chocolate.
Do you like vanilla?
Yes.
Do you like dessert?
Yeah, this is like a creme brulee on oak. It is so good. Like, wow.
That's exceptional.
Yeah, and it's got a little bit of that
Wow.
that like burnt crusty flavor
When
to
that
it.
when that char flavor comes back, it
on
has
on the caramel.
it has
you know.
chocolatey vanilla caramelness to it. and it's just wonderful. Well, you're
I'm
right.
amazed at how robust and somewhat delicate this is at the same time.
Wow.
Like, I know that's very, like, contrasting.
Night
But
This is one of
But
those
it's
things that it's kind of hard to go back from. You know what I mean by
the
that?
very first, like, if you break up the palate into thirds, the very first of this, the palate, it hits the palate very delicate and very light and almost floral, and then it goes into this chocolate right in the middle, this super chocolatey
chocolate is in the middle,
going
yes.
on. And then when it finishes with so much of that that burnt caramel and the chocolate and the mineral water that you're using, and like everything in here is just.
We talk quite a bit. We'll mention that things have got a chocolate to them, and generally when we say that, we're talking about a hint, a wisp of chocolate. This is not a hint. This is like a chocolate bomb.
Yeah.
It really is, and
But
and in
here's
the
the thing,
best
too.
possible way.
It's a malty chocolatey thing. Like, and there's a difference between malt and there's a difference between chocolate, even though they have similar flavors. This has a very chocolate right on the right. Like when you taste that chocolate, it's very much like that, but it finishes like, that flavor left over when you finish a malted milk ball. Mm-hmm. It finishes like that. It's really
You're
like
right.
you said,
Yes,
dessert.
that
It's
sort
so
of
good.
dusty
Very dessert.
chocolate
Yeah.
malt flavor. Wow, that's one of the best things I've tasted in a long time. That's really
this is
really
super
good.
special. Thank
Wow.
you so
Yeah,
much.
what
Cheers, guys.
a
Thank you.
wonderful treat. Now I really hope this isn't anticlimactic at this point, because although I'm sure glad that what I've got for our final beer is in fact this, potentially big, because Parish Brewing's Grand Reserve Cellared Annual Ale. This is the 2018. They tell you age this, don't drink it right away. So this one's been aging for a while. And I got to tell you, Parish, I've never had a Parish Brewing beer
I'm pretty
I didn't
excited
think was
about this,
exceptional.
too.
Yeah. So
And
it'll be
I'm
interesting
such
to
a
see how
big
this
fan of
goes.
barley wines. Now, those of you out there who don't really know what a barley wine is, it's about as big as a beer gets.
Right.
It is sweet. It is crazy delicious. It's
Usually
crazy
lots
malty.
of dried fruit flavors.
I had a conversation with a friend of mine a couple weeks ago. When I asked about a malty beer, he didn't know what I was talking about. I was like, well, it's the opposite of a hoppy beer. Mm-hmm. He goes, well, what is malt? I said, actually, it's one of the primary ingredients in beer. Like,
Right.
You have to have it, or you
You have
don't
to
really
have malt in your beer. Right.
And he's like, I'd never heard of that. And I was a little blown away by that. But
Even
at the same
Bud Light
time,
has malt.
Hops is so popular that no one realizes what
People-
the other ingredients
Right.
in beer
People
are.
talk much more about hops.
Even though hops is flavoring and bittering, and malt is literally what it's made from. It was an interesting conversation, and I was explaining it to him, so it was pretty fun.
And with this barley wine, how long would you say you'd want to age it?
I'm not an expert in
Oh,
this area,
smells
but
so good.
I would say anything a year or more is
I would agree with
probably about right for barley wine. But unlike most styles of beer, barley wines can improve with age, whereas IPAs, you want them as fresh as you can get them. When you go to the brewery and you're drinking it right out of the tap, and it was
that's as good
it
as
was
that
brought
gets.
over. That's as good as an IPA is going to get. Barley wines, I think you could max them out. Like you could age them for too long.
You can. If you age them too long, a lot of barley wines just kind of turn into soy sauce.
Right.
Is
but
it true the gap's like 4 years is kind of as far as
Yeah,
wanna go
you
with
don't
it?
generally want to go further than 4 years.
So this is a 2018.
Because some of them just won't stand up at that
So
point.
this is a 2018. So this is just a little more than a year old.
This
at
smells
point. Yeah.
like burnt caramel with raisins and vanilla.
Which
and
is what a barley wine's supposed to
this
smell like.
smells exactly like what I want in a barley wine. Like,
I don't think the boys at Parish are going to disappoint you, Ian.
It's almost got like a velvet smell.
oh
It's
my
like
gosh,
texture
this
and
is
smell.
so good.
Yeah, that's something.
This is exactly what barley wine should be from Parish. Like, this is outstanding.
These guys have got it figured out. I'm telling you. Parish.
Like the notes on this, the dark fruit, the date, the raisin, the vanilla that comes through there, and the vanilla kind of winds through it. It's not just here's vanilla and then go on. It literally winds through it, and then there's the maltiness in this just sticks to the tongue. This is I don't know. There used to be a hard malt candy that was available years ago. Have you ever had those? This has
Yes.
This has that like sticks to the tongue kind of thing. Like those were candy where you couldn't kind of get it out of the wrapper. You had to kind of put the wrapper in your mouth and chew it off the wrapper because it was so sticky.
Yes.
Am I showing my age?
Yeah. I always say, am I dating myself? Because I used to do that
I
a lot.
literally
when I was
hadn't
single.
thought about that candy since I was probably in my single digits until now.
Well, Ian, let me challenge you to take another nice sip of that and then go back to the whiskey.
Oh, I want to try this.
I'm curious.
Yeah, I'm totally curious to see what happens too.
Yeah.
So-
I'm curious to see your response to it.
Oh my God.
Mm-hmm.
Like it makes a chocolate bomb even more of a chocolate bomb.
Yeah, how can you get more chocolatey than it was?
But it brings out
This
a
is how.
creaminess too that
It
wasn't.
seems like it has a texture now.
Yes.
That wasn't evident at first. There's a silky creaminess to the whiskey now after the barley wine, and I'm interested to see what happens going back to the barley wine too.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. I mean, this would, and I'm not even sure if I'm brave enough to do it, but this would make the best Boilermaker in the
Probably
freaking
the most
world.
expensive Boilermaker.
That'd be a very
The most
fancy
expensive
Boilermaker.
and most awesome. But you could see that at like some really swanky Manhattan bar, like a $400 Boilermaker, you know?
Well, I mean,
Also,
yeah.
also one drink limit on this Boilermaker.
Right? Yeah, no question.
What
But
is
I
what
can
is the
see that
proof on
happening.
this? Because it's a little boozy.
Yes,
but
it
not
is.
not in a way that makes you
It
like.
should tell you on the side of the
react.
bottle. I
It's
want
gotta
to
be
say
over
it's
9.
13 point something.
It says patience. Grand Reserve should be saved and shared, brewed only once per year. Our barley wine ale is characterized by intensely complex malt. Absolutely, I agree with that.
Yes.
Hop fermentation profile, strong and robust. It will age gracefully when cellared, and I agree. It's so good. And this is a 2018, you said?
Yes,
So it's
2018.
been vintage 2018. So it's been 2 years in. Outstanding, absolutely outstanding. And,
I think they brew it towards the end of the year, so it may be more like a year and a half old.
right.
In terms of this,
It doesn't
particular
say the ABV on it, but it might be that it's variable.
I
as well.
believe it's around 13.
You know, you go by Dogfish Head's 120 minute IPA, and it doesn't have an ABV on it, but it usually lingers around 18%.
Holy moly!
Yeah,
I always say with the barley
15 and
wines,
18.
just like the 120, you kind of want to let it warm up a bit. Because I feel
Yes.
like you get a better nose. It's like just below room
You're
temperature.
absolutely right. And this I brought in my pack, so it was with the other beers, and it probably is a little colder.
It is a little cold. I'm going to pour a little more.
We
though.
used to, so the old beer bar I used to work at, is we used to sit there and warm our glasses with our hands just to get it
Oh yes,
to
yes,
temp
to
so
get it
that
to
we
warm
could
up,
start
yeah.
really enjoying all the
Yeah.
flavors that go
Now,
into
I'm
it.
I'm a person that loves my beer cold, even colder than you're supposed to drink it. But I will agree with you when it comes to stouts and barley wines. Warming them up is generally.
You know me,
a
when
great
I'm
idea.
questionable about a beer, a lot of times I want to try it warmer anyway, just to see what happens. With
Right
the
to see
flavors.
the flavors.
I
come out.
I like doing that with whiskey as well because you get this whole ride through the different flavors when it's cold, and it changes.
All right, so Ian, we've done our sampling. Our time for the basic show is essentially up. Do we want to do a bonus segment? Is there more to talk about? We haven't talked about Corona.
We haven't talked about Corona. Let's do a bonus segment
All right.
for fun. So if you guys are listening to this on a podcast medium, then you'll have to flip into you'll have to
YouTube?
flip into the YouTube channel
Yep.
to get the bonus sections. I think
Or we
that's
can
how we're
always
going to do it from now on.
we can post the bonus segment.
And if you
by
guys
itself.
are watching this, by the way, man, go to our YouTube channel and say hi, man. Say stuff in the comments. Please hit the subscribe button. It'll let you know whenever we post material if you missed it, because I know some of you have jobs. You know.
Yeah. So, Austin, you can stick around for a bonus segment.
Definitely.
Okay. We'll drink some barley wine and maybe some whiskey.
Maybe make a Boilermaker out of it.
At least as close as we're gonna get. Yes. Yeah, for sure. Oh, okay. So Austin has been our guest. Austin Millspaugh from Heaven's Door. Your whiskey is wonderful. I'm telling you. Do not. If anyone is put off by the celebrity attachment to this, do not sleep on this. This is really wonderful and brilliant whiskey. And if you're a Bob Dylan fan, you got to try it because you're a Bob Dylan fan, and this is something he's associated with.
Yeah, first off, just go, if you're going to listen to my recommendation, go straight for the double barrel. It's
got the loudest voice.
It's amazing. It's so good.
It's sex in a bottle, sorry.
It really is. If the double barrel is sex in a bottle, what is this that we're trying now?
Oh, you're talking about the
bootleg.
bootleg. I don't know. I always say the bootleg is kind of that after dinner. That's post-sex.
That's the post-sex cigarette?
That's the post-sex cigarette. That's perfect.
I don't know if we say that because that's like gauche now, but whatever.
Yeah, well, we're not very woke on this show.
No.
That's what I figured.
I'm working on it.
But yeah, we're working on it. We're trying to become better people. And that's what we do.
This whiskey makes me want to be a better person.
This makes me want to be a better person indeed. All right, bonus segment coming up. Thank you to everyone who is leaving us now. Thank you for being a part of show number 176, and cheers.
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 The first time we tried this, they gave us the 8-month, and as just us kind of being nerds, we kind of looked at it and we were going, whoa, really? That's where the finish is.